The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630, the sports capital.
All right, March Madness ramping up as we've got all these conference tournaments going on. We got one in town starting tomorrow night, Capital One Arena, the Atlantic 10 tournament with two of our local teams involved in that. George Mason gets started on Friday, and George Washington will get started on Thursday. Bernadette McGlade is the Atlantic 10 commissioner, and she joins us now. We reserve great weather for you here, so you can thank me now if you'd like.
Oh, thank you, Andy. I really appreciate it. It is a beautiful day, and I hope the fans are already planning to travel into town.
Yeah, it is a good day, and it's a good day to go downtown. And this is a tournament that has been played in other places. Is this the first year that it's been in Washington?
No, actually, we've been here 2 other times, and we've had great events. Our fans really love coming to D.C., not only just for the games in Capital One, but also there's just so many things to do here in the nation's capital. So this is our 3rd time that we've been to Capital One Arena. Okay,
great. So this is your 16th year as commissioner of the Atlantic 10. Were you somewhat of a trailblazer in as a woman to take over a position like this? How many conference commissioners over the years have been women?
Well, when I first took the job in 2008, there was only one other female, so there were 2 of us out of 32 Division I commissioners. But now I'm happy to say we have actually 10 women that are D1 commissioners. So we have about a third of the 31 commissioners now that are female.
Oh, okay. So that's an impressive move forward. And you were also somewhat of a trailblazer in that pretty much right after you finished playing college basketball at North Carolina, you became a head coach at Wake Forest at the age of 23. The game was different then. It wasn't that far removed from when it was AIAW, that it was a full NCAA sport. But what was that like, bringing women's college basketball into the modern era?
Yeah, it was really amazing. I actually was hired in 81 at Georgia Tech. And
Georgia Tech. Yeah.
17 years there. Yeah. I was the women's coach for 7 years, and you're exactly right. It was right at the transition from the AIAW, and then the NCAA was basically, overseeing women's basketball. They started in 1980, so I was 1 year removed from that. But it was an amazing opportunity for me. I was very fortunate that Georgia Tech took a chance on a really young professional, and obviously it launched my career at that point in time. I started the same week at Georgia Tech as Bobby Crimmins.
Wow.
I think a lot of people know Bobby Crimmins from his coaching days, and we had a lot of fun at Georgia Tech.
You elected not to stay in the coaching path when you got such an early start. Why?
Well, Homer Rice, who was a legend in intercollegiate athletics, he just literally just passed away at 97 this past summer. And Homer Rice hired me, and he gave me the opportunity. I was working administratively as well as coaching. Back in the day, you weren't just a head coach. I had other administrative responsibilities. And he offered me the position to move into full-time administration overseeing football and men's basketball, which in the late 80s, that was a really unique opportunity. And I was only 29 at that point in time, and I thought to myself, I should get this experience. It would be unbelievable professional opportunity. And if I don't like it, if I really miss coaching, I was so young that I just decided I would just go back to coaching after I tried the administration for a couple of years. But the opportunity was so great. I loved working with our football program and all of our 16 men's and women's programs at Georgia Tech. And then we we were bidding for the Olympics, and I worked the 96 Olympic Games. So I just never returned to the coaching ranks.
Well, you've been at this a long time in this conference, 16 years in the Atlantic 10. And I've read where you chafe a little bit in your conference being called a mid-major. Is that correct?
Well, we're a basketball-centric conference, so we don't have football. And basically, we've been a multi-bid Division I men's basketball conference for 17 of the last 18 years.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that qualifies us, especially in the sport of basketball, to, we can play basically with anyone in the country. So we try not to use the moniker mid-major, and it really is as it relates to being a really multi-bid basketball-centric league.
But one of your marquee teams, George Mason, made its mark in 2006 as, the first mid-major to get to the Final Four. So you kind of wear that as a badge of pride, but I understand where you're coming from, too, and that maybe you've made the next step forward in being considered more than just a mid-major, correct?
Yeah, and it's one of those things, too, where I know some people, it really, really bothers them, sometimes our coaches. The terminology doesn't keep me awake at night. What keeps me awake at night is, protecting our membership. VCU made the same run that you're referencing that Mason did and went all the way to the Final Four. When Xavier was in the league, they went all the way to the Elite Eight. So, I think it's a matter of, we just want to be a nationally relevant basketball league. We want to get multiple teams into March Madness, and, hopefully that's always going to be our flagship sport.
Talking to Bernadette McGlade, the Atlantic 10 tournament starts tomorrow, Capital One Arena. Bernadette, the commissioner of the league. Let me hit you with a couple of things that are going on in the sport, and this is a comment that came from Kevin Willard, the coach of Maryland, who talked about the double transfer, that you could go to a big school and it's not necessarily working out, but you could go to a school, and I won't call it a mid-major, but a school the size of, say, George Washington or George Mason, up your game, and then transfer again in a way that teams in your league are being used as maybe like a minor leagues. How do you react to that?
Yeah, well, it's a very real issue. It's really challenging. The transfer portal that basically has given free rein for student athletes to transfer. There are some transfer students now that are at their fourth school. Mm-hmm. They literally started somewhere, then they transfer again, and then they transfer yet again. So, the hardship is, the high school prospects are really being disadvantaged to some degree because the first thing all the coaches, and I will say including my coaches in the A-10, the first thing that they're doing is going to the transfer portal to see who's in the transfer portal because they already know that those athletes have a year experience of playing at Division I. They've been coached. They're more mature. They're bigger. They're stronger. And so it really has changed the chemistry and the makeup of the game. The one thing that our schools really know that's a top priority, you have to start looking at how can you best retain your players so you don't get your best player picked off every year by another school. And that's what our coaches in our schools, and that's where I think the NIL will be beneficial for the A-10 as well.
Yeah, I mean that's and they are trying to get their arms around it, but it is at the point where you had Danny Hurley, the coach of the two-time defending champion team, say on 60 Minutes that half of his roster or more is considering transferring. Many of them know where they're going to go and have even had contact as to how much they're going to get in NIL. I imagine that's the same thing in your league. He's at the highest level there with national championship teams, and you've got teams that, people at least refer to as mid-majors. That's got to be an issue that concerns you, right?
It absolutely. It's a big concern. And, I think that everyone's upping their game in terms of their own environment, their own culture, trying to enhance the experience for the student athletes so that they can retain them. But like you said, it's not unique to the A-10. When you have a team that's like you said, UConn, it's a, repeat, national champion, and their players are transferring, that tells everyone there's an issue right now in Division I with the transfer portal. I don't know what the solution's going to be, but I think there is going to have to be some sort of a solution.
Yeah, I mean, there's all kinds of suggestions, but, if it's going to be professional sports, make it like professional sports, sign contracts. I mean, don't you think we're getting close to that?
I do think we're getting close to that. I think that with the opportunity for institutions to provide more financial benefits to all their student athletes. Everybody, I'm sure all your listeners have been reading about this House settlement. It probably will get final approval on on April 7th, which ironically is the night of the national championship game.
How about that?
And yeah, I don't know if the judge has had a little bit of humor in selecting that date, but I think that absolutely it is an issue, and I think that being able to provide student athletes with more financial support is just maybe one small way to be able to help curb the movement.
Yeah, well, again, it's something that got out of hand very quickly, and they got to reel it back in, and I'm interested to see how they do that. If people want to get tickets to the Atlantic 10 tournament, which starts tomorrow, how do they do that?
Well, all of our schools, obviously, if you're a fan of George Washington or Mason or St. Joe's or Dayton, whatever, you can go directly on their websites to their ticket office because all the teams have their team blocks. So if you are concerned about a team block, you can do that. And then otherwise, you can go directly to Capital One Arena. Obviously, Ticketmaster, all of our tickets are on Ticketmaster, and we've had a nice uptick in all of our ticket sales, especially since the bracket was announced on this past Sunday night.
Well, best of luck with it. Enjoy your stay here in Washington, and we'll catch up soon. Thanks, Bernadette.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Hope to see you at Capital One.
All right. Bernadette McGlade, Atlantic 10 Commissioner. Thank you. That's starting tomorrow. And again, George Washington will get their start on Thursday, and George Mason will, as I think they were the number 2 seed, they will start on Friday.